How you doing, Pastor?
Wonderful. How are you doing today?
Man, we're doing awesome. We're doing awesome.
Great. Well, I'd like to welcome you to Clergy Talk Podcast, the world wants to know. And would you please introduce yourself to my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Shea.
My name is Michelle.
And,
hello.
Watson, and we're with the Pantry Podcast. And, man, we're just so grateful to be here. So grateful just to have woken up this morning and have the breath of life.
Wonderful. So tell us a little bit about your background and who you are and what you do.
You want to start?
Yeah, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I own 3125, which is a women's blog as well as a faith-based apparel store. So that's what I do for work. I also do freelance graphic design and stuff. That's another arm of it. So it's like a multi-tiered business endeavor, but then we also co-host the Pantry Podcast together. So that happens every Wednesday. We drop a new episode, and this season is called Unnaturally Nourished, where we're talking about the ways that God nourishes us that the world just can't understand.
And
wow, that's a good topic right there.
Yeah, and I'm in the ministry, men's ministry leader, life group leader. Also worked with the Army since I was just before 18 years old. Retired medically. Due to some combat issues. But from that on, I just worked with the Army. So I got a bunch of jobs.
Great, because I'm a military vet. I first went to the Marine Corps in 79, and then I joined the Army in 87. I know, I'm a traitor. I jumped ship. And then I got out the Army in 91, did the whole Desert Storm thing as a combat engineer and all that. Right. So you have a testimony for me today.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could just go in several different directions when we talk about this, but I think really what it boils down to is getting back to a true identity. Mm-hmm. For my own personal experience, and she can share across a little bit about herself, but I grew up in a broken home, was kind of left out there, vulnerable, was taken advantage of sexually as a minor, as a child, moved on through life looking for that identity, looking for something, always, feeling shame. Grew up around grandparents who had, God and Jesus, the Holy Spirit. So I knew about it. My parents weren't quite there yet, but as the years went by, they came across to Christ. I always was looking. I mean, military was perfect for me because, hey, you're good, man. Oh, you're awesome. You're this, you're that, you're everything. Right.
Right.
But always having this little underlying issue of, what is my identity? Really, sometimes you would even question your sexuality because of the nature of what happened.
Right.
And we took that on, and then, joined the Army, man, it was all good. Went to a lot of different conflicts. And I think everything just kind of piled up in that sense. And I ended up with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, with delusions, nightmares, and flashbacks. Ended up at Walter Reed. That is when my parents first found out that I had been molested as a child.
Okay.
I'd never told anyone. But you know what? From that moment on, it's kind of like when you bring things out, I didn't have Christ yet. They had God. They were praying for me. They were everything. I knew he existed. I had gone to Christian high school. And so I knew he existed. I believed, but I felt shameful.
Right,
I felt like,
right.
Adam and Eve sinned in the garden, how they hid. That was kind of me. I was hiding from God, thinking like I would never be able to stand in front of you. I'm not worthy. And see, because everything was falling down on myself.
Right.
But then, a few bad marriages, abused in marriage. I was, stabbed in the back one time, broken nose. But broken nose where it had to be put back in place. But so I was abused husband. And then I went through a couple marriages, and my last marriage, before my wife now, it was one of those marriages that it was beautiful. It was like good friendship, good everything, but no God.
Right.
So when things fell apart, things fell apart. Come 15 years later, I had gone into drugs, came out of drugs for my marriage. And then she wanted to start doing drugs again 15 years in after like 8 miscarriages. And I said, hey, we can't bring that stuff back up in the house. I knew where that was going to lead, was destruction. And so we ended up separating, and I came to a point where I was like, man, I need God. And actually the point was more defiant. It was a, fine, God, I have nowhere left to go. Show me something. And you know what? In 2014, he showed me something.
Okay.
And he showed me a true identity. And so that's where I rest now, in that true identity.
Yeah. And
wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful to hear, considering, you know, everything that you faced. I had a bombshell dropped on me one time where I was listening to a program about post-traumatic combat disorder. And when I was in Desert Storm, I really didn't do too much. I was in the combat engineer unit. We had one crazy day. And what the psychologist said, don't fool yourself. If you were in the arena, chances are you got some issues.
That's right.
Somewhere. And it was funny. The reason why I listened to the show, because I'd been back home for about 2-3 months. And an airplane came by over my head, and it freaked me out. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And I go, okay, I'm good, Mike, you're good. You know, why you're panicking, you're good, you know? But I didn't even realize how deep that runs for veterans. And I think a lot of other veterans probably don't realize that as well.
Right. I think that is a misdiagnosed, undiagnosed, or a rejection sometimes. I've heard other veterans and friends of mine sit there and say, I'm good. But then I find out that they've been waking up in night sweats, or you know, they have to sit a certain way. You know, even that minor of, I have to have my back against the wall and I have to look outwardly.
I'm guilty.
Right, I'm guilty, and you know,
guilty.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because every time I go into a room, I think about where my exit is, where my vantage points are. You know.
Yeah.
All kind of stuff I should have let go. That was 1991. Come on now.
But you know, it's where do we feel comfortable sometimes? You know, I think of these things, and you know, when sin came into the world, I think of like Romans 6:14, right? Sin will have no dominion over you. Let's see, how do we get to this mental point? How do we get to this idea that this sin, that this dirtiness, right, that the world offers? I mean, PTSD is not of God.
Right.
You know, it's not of God. I mean, it's something that distracts. It's something that takes us away. And so when we're sitting there and it's saying that sin has no dominion over you, because why? Because we have this grace of God.
Exactly.
And so we come to that. And once we can identify these things, then we can definitely put them at the throne of grace, right? And be built up in strength through the throne of grace.
Okay. Now I got to ask your wife a question.
Yeah.
All right.
When you met your husband, before y'all got married, did you know that you had to hang in there and be a support system, or how did all that pan out?
So we actually met at church. I was recently saved. I had come to Christ reading the book of Revelation alone on my couch.
Stop! Revelation, oh man. I've been in ministry for a long time. I've changed my view on that book at least a half a dozen times. So if you came to Christ from the book of Revelation, I salute you.
No, I mean, it was, I saw God's grace in that book, because I knew a little bit. Like, I knew, you know, you grow up on children's stories, even though after that you don't hear much about them and your family doesn't go to church. You hear about Noah's Ark, you hear about Moses, you watch the movie Prince of Egypt. You kind of have this idea that, like, God's people never listen.
Right.
And then when they finally listen, they're blessed. And so when I finally came, like, as an adult, decided to read the book of Revelation, I read an annotated version from the website's discoverrevelation.net, I think. And it's this man who felt called by the Lord to annotate all of Revelation, break it down verse by verse and help you understand, and bring in verses from other Bible books to help you understand how it, like, goes back through the Bible and how it points to Christ and all that. So in reading it, this man explained what Jesus dying on the cross meant, which I had never understood. I didn't understand why one man dying on the cross, even if he was God's son, meant I got to go to heaven. That didn't make sense, because I didn't understand propitiation of sins. And so I was like, so when I was reading it, I saw a story where everything is as bad as it's ever been, and yet God still gives people chances. And I remember the guy who made the website, he had pointed to this verse that says, "Blessed are those who don't need signs and wonders to believe in me."
Yeah, that's powerful.
And all I saw in Revelation is signs and wonders that prove the Bible isn't crazy, that prove the Bible is the truth. And I was like, and you're still giving people chances. Like you took out all the people who didn't need signs and wonders, but the people that were hard-headed enough to still need proof, you're giving them the proof. And if they accept you now, they get to come. Like, just, it's not just a book where fire, brimstone, everyone dies. It's like, no, there's still a chance for people. And then after that, there's the 1,000-year reign. More people get a chance. And I was like, this is a book where God is just really patient. He's a gracious, patient God. And so I came to Christ from that book. And then 2 months later, I prayed about going to a church, and I was going to church shop. I was going to I picked a few churches. I was going to try them each out. But when I got to the first one, which is where we're still at, I was like, this is the church. This is the church that I'm going to stay at, because I felt so loved, welcomed. The pastor didn't seem to be preaching things that were all about how to make your life better, how to make it better. It was about God. It was about Christ. And a month later, so exactly 4 weeks later, there's this guy, because the church didn't have anyone my age. I was 23. And there was no one my age at this church. Everyone was either a kid or like married in their 30s or late 20s, or like their kids are already gone, like to college or whatever. So I was not there looking for a man, because there was none. There were no available men. I was like, I'm here looking for the Lord. I'm looking for the Lord.
All right. That's what I'm talking about.
4 weeks in, there's a guy who shows up alone, covered in tattoos. But I'm an artist, so I judge tattoos, right? Bible says don't judge. I judged tattoos. I was like, that's a bad tattoo. That's a bad tattoo. You don't have any taste. This guy had good tattoos. They were done well. He was tall, and he was praising the Lord like it was his job, which it is, right? But, you know, he was like, not everyone in our church is that passionate looking when they're praising the Lord. But this guy was like in tears. And I was like instantly interested in at least welcoming him, because I knew if he was new to the faith, I could relate, right? And I didn't even get a chance to welcome him that day, but I did turn to my friend that I had made, and I was like, who's that? Because her husband had met him, and she's like, I don't know, but he's cute. You should date him. And I was like, that was so abrupt. That was so, and this woman knows the word of God. She's an amazing, beautiful woman. But her husband was listening to Shea's story at the end of church. So fast forward, he introduced himself to me the next week. And then the week after that, he introduced himself to me again. I was like, I remember you. But then he started coming to Bible study a few weeks later. And our church only has one, because we're small. So everyone goes to the same one if they want to come. So he started coming, and we understood a lot of this stuff. Like, we could relate, because we had both been in the world. Him longer than me. We're 18 and a half years apart. So he was in the world a lot longer than me, but both of us were in the world. We were not dilly-dallying with the Bible. We were just in the world. Right. So some people were shocked at the things he was saying. And although I never got into hard drugs, and I didn't, like, I was like a morally good, but still completely wicked person. Right.
I get it.
But I had friends that did tons of drugs. I had friends that slept around a ton. I cursed like a sailor. Like I got it. I understood. And so when he would tell me stories, I was the one who wasn't shocked. So we started talking, hanging out, and, you know, found out each other's ages, started getting interested in him at a deeper level. And, but while we were friends and through Bible study, it's like you're spending all your time talking about the Lord instead of the world. And you get to learn one another's testimony. So I knew that the Lord had snatched PTSD right out of him, which was amazing. And but I know that as a woman, I'm a helpmeet, and that doesn't mean that he's better at everything than me, but it does mean that I have to honor him as a spiritual head, and I didn't want to get involved with anyone that I wouldn't be able to trust, that I was always going to be like, oh, he's terrible. How can I follow him? I'm just going to rebel. Like, why marry someone like that? So I had to marry someone that I could trust, that would be doing God's will. So that took the struggle away from listening to him. Like, it's just a given to honor him and collaborate with him. And it's been a blessing to be built up by him, to encourage him, and to work with him.
Well, that's wonderful. You know, I'm kind of upset about the tattoo thing. I got my tattoo in 79, right? And back then, if you had a tattoo, you was considered a bad boy. Now everybody got tattoos. My little bitty old tattoos are insignificant now, so I always cry about that. Wah, 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 all the time.
Bad timing. Bad timing. You were
all right. So tell me, in your early part of the marriage, what were some of the difficult times, or did you have any that you want to share?
I can start, and you can. Yeah. I think this one, my biggest one is I had always struggled with loneliness, and I had been trying to find a guy to fill the loneliness, and then I found Christ. And so I had mentally accepted that Christ was the whole filler. He was going to fill that void.
Right.
And that a man was just a supplement, right? He was just a good thing. He wasn't the solution. But then, like, it's one thing to know it, and then there's the residual feeling you have, like, yes, you get it, but now you have to walk the walk. And so when we got together, he was so on fire and wanted to just be at every single church event. He wanted to help with every single church event. And so in my mind, I'll blame myself. I'll say that the devil didn't help any, because I'm sure he was whispering stuff. But the combination of my flesh and the devil, whatever degree he was involved, I was very protective of our time. And I was territorial. I found myself jealous of God, because I knew I wanted him to serve the Lord. But I was like, what if he's so passionate? What if he signs up? Like, because our pastor is very excited. Like, our pastor would do something every single day of the week at the church if there was enough people and interest. And I was like, what if he wants to do every single one of those things? When would we ever have a date night? When would we ever, if we have children, when would he ever see our children? I would have to stay home. I couldn't come anymore until the kids are old. Like, those are the things, like, very complex imagination scenarios that I was having in my head. Like, how is this going to work? Like, Lord, you have to give us some time. Now, in reality, we had plenty of time together, and we still do. But in my mind, it was going out of control with, like, imagining he would never be home. I would never see him. The kids would never see him. The kid would grow up to resent church because daddy chooses God over them every day. Like, all this crazy stuff you hear, I was starting to feel like that was my reality. That was the life I was going to live. And what Shea did to really help me is he went anyway. Even if I pushed back, even if I was giving him a hard time and making it tough for him to go, he still went. He's like, look, I'm going. You can come or you can stay, but I'm going. And so he would come back better for it. And so God, when he was gone, I'd be crying or pouting or mad or trying to distract myself. But regardless, God's working with me, because it's just me and God. And I would be sitting there talking to God in my head, because I know he can hear all my thoughts. So every time I'm thinking, I'm kind of like in a dialogue with God in my head.
Exactly.
So like all day long, I'm talking to God. I'm like, this is what I think, God, help me. And I knew better. I knew I was wrong, but I was like, God, you have to help me. You have to show me something. And so over time, he just showed me, and he worked on me, and he made me realize that I'm not the only woman with this problem. And that's why you often see women super involved in the church and men that aren't, because the women don't necessarily, either they want to come with their husband, which is great when it works, right? Or they want to go, right?
Right.
But when their husband wants to go, it's kind of like there's pushback. Like, well, when are you going to spend time with the family? You were at work all day, or whatever. There's a million reasons. So I've become a big proponent of letting your husband go, serve the Lord. You're a ministry to your husband as well. So God needs to honor that, and will honor that, and give y'all space to grow. But he also needs time alone with your husband. Your husband needs time with men. But it took a while for me to get there.
Right. Well, you gotta realize this, and I tell people this all the time. Satan's a deceiver, and we serve a God that speaks. Satan whispers, but God speaks to us, and we have a dialogue with God. But with Satan, it's just suggestions. You know, he might say, well, listen, you've been a good Christian too long. Why don't you go out and have some fun tonight? It ain't going to hurt nothing because you're such a great Christian. Not. All it takes is that one step after on the plank, I guarantee he's right behind you, ready to push you over.
Right.
But I love that analogy about you having a dialogue with God. That's like well said, well put.
I always look at the idea of what you just said, that there's seeds, right? But there's planting of seeds on all sides. So there's the planting of seeds on God's side, and there's a planting of seeds on the enemy side.
Exactly.
We go out and, you know, we say, you know what? It's okay this one time. I used to cuss like a sailor. I mean, oh brother, I mean, we were around the military and it was just like, we didn't have women around us. So it was just the boys. We talking trash all the time, our mouths. To this day, I've cut it back. I stopped it. But when I watch a movie or I happen to, you know, see something or I'm around people who start to cuss, I've found myself slipping. Sometimes it's like it just slips out and you're like, oh no, capture that thought, because we don't want to fall into those patterns of sin, and we want to make sure that we're okay with that. And when you're talking, I'm thinking the whole time, it's like, as a spiritual headship of a home, I had to make a decision. Now, it wasn't one of those decisions that's like, I'm just going to go. I need to get away. No, this was a Holy Spirit calling. I want that to be understood too, that we have to walk in our calling.
Right.
I want to eat of the good food of the land, right? I want to be in that obedience and that willingness in God, that I'm sitting there eating the good food, you know, the good fruits, and the fruits are filling me. This whole time and some funny things about the story, because I like to make some funny things in there. but I remember when we first started dating, she's like, I will follow you anywhere. See, I go to Africa all the time. And so there's this possibility that I could always end up in Africa as a missionary or something, right? And she's like, I'll follow you into the deepest bush. I'll be there for you. And the more serious the relationship got, that change is like, no, I don't know. I can't. But you know what? If we were called today to walk, this is how God works. This is how good God is. She would walk with me. She might not necessarily receive it and be like, you know, like just this willingness, or she might be, it depends on how God works it, but she would go. Because she knows that I'm not just out there abusing, you know, and using the calling.
Right.
I'm listening to the Spirit. He who have the ear, let him hear what the Spirit is saying to the church. And I'm a firm believer in that. Sometimes it's like, you know, people want to walk away from church. Sometimes it's like, it's a lot. When you're in a leadership role, or I mean, you're a pastor, you know that like sometimes it gets brutal in the leadership positions of churches. And you're like so frustrated. Sometimes you're like, I just want to go. But see, we don't go because the Holy Spirit hasn't released us. You know, at that point in time, it's our desert. You know, the 11 days has now turned into 40 years, and it's okay. As long as we're listening to God and he's using us, then we just keep moving forward. And that's what's been beautiful about being married to Michelle, is that she, even in the conflicts, both of us, but more, you know, I see it in her a lot, and it's beautiful to watch, is even in her conflicts, like she said, she is taking the breakdown and giving it to God. You know, she might be sitting on the bed and just like, but I know in her mind, she's in there like, God, you know, work in me, work for me, show me the right way. And so it's been beautiful just to watch her grow, and, you know, and growing together and being able to sit here and talk with one another. I mean, it's just been beautiful.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So I'm still early in the marriage now. Let's stay early in the marriage.
Okay.
So that was one obstacle that you finally, you know, overcame and conquered. Anything else major popped out before everything just leveled off?
So I'll answer this one. That's cool. All right. So,
I don't even know what you're gonna say, but we'll see. But it's cool.
I think the age difference. So, in the age difference, I've lived longer. I've gone through a lot more, and I don't use that always as my card. That is not how I'm
right.
discuss. What that boils down to is, I've been to war, I've been abused, I've been addicted, I've been this, I've been that, I've heard the politics, I've heard the world, I've heard all of this distortion and this nonsense. And so I quickly funnel and shut that off. And as a young person, they're still learning and experiencing these things. And, you know, I think, Pastor, you could understand this too with our age, you know, because I'm almost near 50 now. And it's like, we sit there in this and we're like, I think we get into these God moments where it's just like, okay, I got to shut everything else off, man. It's just stressing me out too much, or it's just too much. I need to just focus on God, focus on the gospel, focus on staying in the presence of Christ. And there's still, you know, I think one of our struggles recently was, you know, with COVID and all this stuff and all of the explosion in the atmosphere that's going on right now. And I've watched her though struggle at the beginning, right? And our marriage started to kind of suffer because I just don't want to hear it. It's like it's so much turmoil and so much going on, and it's there. But I want to focus on God. I want to focus on the peace. And so one thing that we've worked through recently is getting to a point where we are both kind of starting to align to that thought. And last night we were interviewing someone, and she articulated that exact thought that we got to shut down the distortion of the world, right, and start focusing on God and let our words be produced from that aspect, whether we think it, want to say it, or we don't want to say it. She said this last night. Sometimes we have to just be quiet and let God work.
True.
Yeah.
That is exactly right, because I tell people this: God sees the shipwreck. We see the surface, all right? God knows how many shipwrecks the person has had. He also knows how to put the team together to help fix the shipwreck.
Right.
Because when you think about the Old Testament and the New Testament, the Old Testament, God called a prophet, right? Jesus started his ministry, he got a team. He didn't need the team.
Right.
He could have did it all by himself. Right. But no, he got a team to show us that we need a team.
Yes.
And when you take a look at the team, and then when you go to the book of Acts, you see the whole team ideal come together in full force. And one of the things I learned is that God picks the time, the team, and the place, everything. So we as human beings, we have a tendency to take too much on our shoulders, you know. We have a tendency to think we're doing too much than what we're actually doing. In reality, we got to sit back and just kind of like let God do it. And we come in with the dialogue that God gives us.
Amen.
Right. And on that side, she is my perfect mate in that idea. Because there's things that I struggle, you know, come on, we're men. You know, it's like, honey, calm down, be a little bit more patient. You know, I think today it was like our little girl did something and I just was like, come on, girl. And then she's, you know, Kalia took it, was crying a little bit. And I'm like, she's just being defiant. She goes, no, honey, she disappointed you. See, so she's helping me learn the nurturing aspect. See, I think that's the beautiful thing too is like when God said husbands will love their wives and wives will honor their husbands, it's because it's 2 points that we don't understand.
Yeah.
You know, husbands, we're not that nurturing lovers, man. We're more, when we start out in the world, we're more of a perverted love. and then God it teaches us. And then he brings a woman into our lives if we're lucky enough to find one that shows us this nurturing love the way that God would produce it. And on the other side of that, in that idea of like honoring, right? Women, brother, me and you could fight today, and tomorrow we'd be like, what's up, bro? A woman fights today with her girlfriend, and they never talk.
Never make up again.
They might never make up again.
That's a done deal.
Right? So God teaches us in that moment how, you know, he reflects into us that we're all brides, number one. I think that's important for men to understand too. So there's nothing that the woman can't teach us if God is instilling in her. The same way a woman can be taught from the man because God is instilling in her. So what it does is when we're equally yoked to Jesus and equally yoked to one another, then we learn from one another. You know, we don't just say, oh, who are you? Or, you know, pride, we put pride aside. And we allow that conversation to flourish into a godly perspective to where we can come and be in the presence of the Lord and stand in that holy ground that he's promised us.
Yeah.
Wow, that makes a lot of sense. So when did you feel called for the ministry?
So when I first came back to church, I just wanted to just eat the word. You know, it's like I just wanted to be in the word and hear the word. It was so encouraging to be told that I'm not this horrible, evil, gross, nasty, ugly person. You know, that God created me good. In fact, very good.
Yeah.
And so so the words would just come and study. And then one day we have a pastor's wife, and I'll call her name out, Miss Marjorie. She's awesome. She's like one of the greatest street evangelists persons I've ever seen. She has brought more people to Jesus because she's just so forward. And I really believe she taps into what God, I didn't know this at the time, by the way, but I really think she taps in the Holy Spirit. And she came to me one time, and she looked at me, and she just looked at me, and I no, out of the blue, she goes, "You're gonna go to Bible college." And I looked at this in my mind, you know, this is like a month in, and I'm like, who's this crazy woman? and so, because I've never cared about titles, not even in the military. I never was the one that was like, I got to get this. You know, I just made the rank and it just happened. But
right.
So I'm sitting there at work, and I still work for the Army, and everything that I was doing, Bible college, Bible college, Bible college. And I was like, huh? What? I couldn't even concentrate almost, to the point. Well, long story short, went to Bible college. So my calling started off early, and in this idea that, you know what, I just want, and in that calling, what it is, I want to share this message of hope with other people, because I know that there are other people like me out there. I know that there are other people that are in struggles. I know that the answer is Jesus Christ, that the world doesn't have this answer. And so it started off pretty early, and I pretty much slid in next with pastor, and I'm there for pastor, whatever he needs in that sense. Like, we're a small church again, you know, we've got a lot of things that we have to do, and you know how that goes sometimes. Not everybody does the serving, you know, so it's like a handful of people that do everything. And I don't care, though. You know, when people say, what is your position at church? I fill in. So if the sound guy is gone, I go to sound. Mm-hmm. If the worship ministry needs someone to sing, I sing. If pastor needs me to, you know, do an intro or preach a sermon, or you know, do the communion, or be an usher, or go mow the lawn, or shovel the side, that's what I do. I do it, and I do it joyfully, and I do it unto the Lord. And that didn't always start out that way, but one day God and I had this discussion about a year in. We have a very ambitious pastor. He likes to add a lot of stuff, but it's cool stuff. I mean, hey, video and sound, and, you know, pipe and drape and lights, and it's cool. You know, it really does make it look better. I mean, whatever. And but I had to have a moment, because I was military, and I always remembered that we always had people. We always had volunteers. In fact, if you didn't volunteer, I'd volunteer you. Right. And so I was sitting there one time, and we were a setup church, and we were setting up this church, and there's only like me and pastor, and it's like we're setting up a church for like 85, 90 people in a school, right? And my flesh came in. I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is horrible. What's wrong with people? And I started having this bitterness. Well, about 3 weeks into that bitterness, I'm driving to church one morning, and God goes, who are you doing this for? Who are you doing it for? And it was almost like this clear voice. He goes, you need to be doing it for me. And from that moment on, I mean, you know, you still get that little inkling, and you shut it down real fast. But I serve the Lord, man. I go to church and serve the Lord, and that's what He's called me to do. Right.
Wow, that's fantastic. Because, you know, I got a similar story myself. Because when I started out quite a few years ago, I felt I just need to get the theology right. Mm-hmm. That was my focus point. And then through trial and error and a couple of Bible studies, and then one of my members said, Mike, we may not have had a whole lot of people there, but the team you had there, we needed you. But I couldn't get that. I couldn't grasp it at the time, because I just wanted to get the theology right. And then I realized that ministry is not just about getting the theology right. It's about people and relationships. Right. And talking to people and letting people know you care. And a couple years ago, one of my pastor buddies said, Mike, nobody cares about how much theology you know. They care about, did you go see Mama when she was in the hospital? Did you go see Uncle Bob when he got locked up? You know, and when Sister Sue just needed somebody to talk to for 30 minutes, did you shut up and listen? Wow. Right. You know, it's stuff like that that really identifies ministry. I had to learn that the hard way. You know, I got it now, but from point A, starting out, I just get the theology right. So I studied all this stuff, and then God told me I don't know nothing. Wait a minute! Oh, I know something. I read a couple books. So I went to seminary school and then realized I didn't know that much. Right. And then my goal was to become Dr. Vertner, and then he said, "Well, I don't need you to go that far, Mike, because I'm going to teach you now." Oh. So it was like, okay, all right, whatever, you know. So God teaches His teachers. Right. Amen. Even though we go to seminary school, but He still teaches us, and He molds us to deal with the mission that he gives us.
Yeah.
And when I think about, well, now I'm good with it, but during the process, I was like, I was on a roller coaster ride. I was up and down, up and down, up and down, all over the place. And I'm glad the roller coaster ride is over, I think.
At least all the big ones. You're where the big drops over.
Exactly.
I think I heard
you evangelize, right?
Yeah.
Wow, and you're actually a street evangelist.
Where's our signs? Go grab.
We're on video, but hold on, I'll grab it.
Okay. This is our best minister. He's getting a sign. This is the most. So to paint a picture while he's getting the sign, we live right outside DC, and we live in a very affluent area. We aren't very affluent, right? Except in the Lord, but we were blessed to be here. Circumstances, like he orchestrated our ability to be here, but most people don't want to hear it. If you mention Jesus, they walk away, they get rude.
Yeah.
But it's like a 9-to-1 rejection rate, like maybe even 20-to-1 rejection rate. When you go out there, there's like one person you're out there for, never 5, never 10, never 20, So yeah, you want to hold it up?
Yeah.
So free prayers.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Those up. And
I like that.
And it was actually our pastor who started it, and we realized it was so good because in this area, a lot of time you go out there and you're like trying to soul win, right? Like you're trying to like introduce people to Christ or prompt them, and then something in them it clicks and they choose to accept Christ there, or at least go to a church where they can hear more and explore a relationship with God. In our area, a lot of the time the people we find are people who used to go and they've fallen away from church, or they're struggling, and because there's not a big network of believers out here, they're struggling because they feel lonely, because all day you're berated by worldly things, and a lot of sin you just can't agree with, but that's like celebrated. And so they need encouragement, they need prayer. Their kid went to school and grew up all kind of wrong and confused, and so they just need someone that is confident enough to stand out there holding a free prayer sign to pray for them. So that's a big part of our ministry when we go out there.
I do want to say that Justin Fields, I'm going to throw him out. He's a good friend of ours. So it wasn't pastor. It was actually Justin Fields.
Okay, yeah.
From our church that came up with this. Him and Jasmine came up with the free prayer signs.
That's cool.
And an example of this, we have a market, those farmers markets downtown Silver Spring. We live in Silver Spring, Maryland. And so we'll go down on a Saturday, and honestly, you walk through, you're like, hey, how you doing? You start to talk to them. And most people don't even want to have a conversation, because I don't just walk up and sit on the corner and preach like you're condemned to hell and all this stuff. I mean, honestly, these people will sit there and just go right into their mold. So the best thing to do sometimes is go out there and be friendly, be loving, and just talk to people and see if they need anything. But we were down there, and I've got a guy from Baltimore, no masker, but he's a no masker guy, and not throwing him out there. I won't even put his name out there.
Yeah.
But we're in the middle, and security down here is really hard on that. We're definitely a masking area. You have to wear a mask, or you won't be able to be in certain places and all this stuff. So they escorted us out of the market. And I was like, okay, let me just go out of the market with you. And God has a way, though. God has a way of these divine appointments. So we have these signs, and all of a sudden we hear this lady. She's like, hey. We just hear like this faint, hey. So we turn around, we're thinking like, oh, here we go, because he won't wear a mask. And she goes, I need prayer. I need prayer.
Oh, wow.
So God actually realigned. We would have never have been over there if the security guard hadn't have guided us over there and told us, hey, you gotta leave here. So it's like God was saying, no, I don't want you here. I want you here. And so we were there. Perfect, man. We had a good conversation with her. That was the divine appointment for that day. And so, but we go out there and we love on the people and we talk to the people, and if they're willing to listen or talk, and there's a lot of young kids down there that, they're mixed religion. Well, I do a little bit of Buddha and a little bit of Christianity, a little bit of Muslim. And
wow.
Right. And it's like, and so through those conversations, we were starting to build relationships, and then COVID came. That's been a little bit tougher because we are in a mask area. That's why the free prayer sign works, because you can just hold it up, and then they are the willing participant to come into your area.
They don't feel like they don't have to put their defenses up because you're coming at them. Right. They're like, okay, these people are inviting me in, And some people have even asked, like, okay, what do you mean free prayer? Is there such a thing as paid prayer? And you're like, I'm glad you asked, because at least now we're having a conversation.
Right.
Or they're like, prayers, like, what are you? Like, because I mean, we're not the only group that prays, right? There's other religions that also call it prayer. They're just not praying to God. And so they're like, okay, well, what religion are you? So like, there's tons of potential conversations.
Right.
And we used to do every Wednesday before we had our daughter. She's 21 months. So like one of us still needs to be there, but we used to go out every Wednesday and we would invite the church, and it was like around 5 o'clock or 6, like before dinner. And it was hard for some people to make it, but we always made it. Cause I mean, we were dating and then we were married. So we were already together. And we would go down there and we ended up walking around, because standing in one place, people kind of just walk around you.
Yeah.
Kind of walking, you can kind of trust the Lord to like bring you to someone.
Right.
And so Shea got really, I say Shea because I did not get good at this. Shea got really good at like just striking up conversations with anyone and everyone, like in a way they wouldn't just deny him. And then I would always kind of hop in, especially if it was a woman, so that they would feel safe. It's not weird because a dude's just coming up to you. But we also started getting to know the local homeless population. But like he said, the kids, it was really cool. And there's always something God has for you. Sometimes you'll get nothing, right? You'll feel like, you want to call it a waste, but God's faithful, but you feel like, what was I even used for today? Except just faithfully being here. And then you're like, well, let's just go grab dinner because it's getting late. And so you walk into some place and you strike up a conversation with the person ringing your order, and they need prayer, or you end up giving them the church website, or so you never know. It's just about being available.
Ooh, available, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Because I always used to wonder about the hellfire preachers on the corner.
Right.
I said to myself, I wonder how that's working for them.
Right. Like, how many people are you actually getting, or do you just go home and think, all of them going to hell today,
like you're going to hell, you're going to hell,
right?
You're going to go to hell, get reincarnated, and go back to hell.
Right.
Oh my goodness, this can't be working.
Right, I know.
Yeah, that word predestination really plays a trickery there.
Right, exactly. Well, I'm kind of sneaky with my evangelism. Yeah. I'll tell a person, look, I'm not an evangelist, so I'm not going to convince you of anything. I'm a teacher. So you want to talk about something? I kind of like sneak it in on them.
That's wise, actually. That's really wise, because not everyone has the gift of evangelism, but they're all called to share the word. So it's like, okay, well, how are you going to share the word? It might not be just cold calling people, right?
Right.
Because I write blogs. I took a break this past year to focus on the podcast, starting to put out the blogs again. And there's people who will pop up out of nowhere and ask for prayer on my website, or someone's going to actually interview me on their podcast next week, and it's not because they know our podcast, but because they found my blog, and was like, I really like what you wrote here. It really made me think. And then Instagram stories, right. Your friends who aren't like believers of Christ, they see them, and I've gotten a lot of friends that don't believe that will ask me a question based on what I have put in my Instagram story.
Right.
And so I've been able to share in that way. And it's not like you don't have to feel guilty if you don't feel led to go out to the street with a sign or a tract. If God calls you to it, don't say no. Go do it, even if it's
right.
But there's so many ways. This podcast is the perfect example. Wearing a shirt that strikes up conversation about the Lord is a way. There's so many ways. The thing is, when the opportunity comes, say yes, and now you're doing the calling, so
that's nice.
Good. Exactly. I bumped into an old school street evangelist. He's probably about 73 years old, 13 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And we had a conversation, and he had his card, said Jesus Saves on it, and I was sitting there Chick-fil-A, right, and he gave me a pamphlet, and I says, thank you for the pamphlet, but I'm a preacher as well. And we just started talking, and he was sharing his testimony about how 3 times he had his windshields broken out.
Wow.
And he said, well, they're not going to stop me because I'm going to keep on teaching Jesus. Mm-hmm. And he says, everybody knows me around here. And I saw the strength that he had, considering that you're out here on the streets teaching Jesus. You done got your window broke out 3-4 times, but you're still teaching God. And to me, he had nothing. I had nothing but respect for him. Respect, love, and prayers.
Right.
Yeah, we sit here sometimes, and as we're talking evangelism, I start thinking of like, you know, the influences that come from other religious aspects, right? The one thing that we sometimes fail to do in the Christian community is invest. You know, like you're saying, he gets out on that street every day, right? 70-something years old. He's been out there, broken windows all the time. He says, it ain't going to stop me. It ain't going to stop me. I'm going to be out here. I'm going to invest time for the Lord. I'm going to just keep preaching the word. See, and then I'll bet he never stops. I'll bet when he talks to somebody or he greets somebody or he starts to know somebody, he reinvests and talks to them. You see it in the Muslim community. And I'm not beating down that. What I'm actually saying is they put a lot of investments to young people. And I would challenge our Christians brothers and sisters today that we need to get out there and start investing in our young people, because if we're not investing and they want to be loved. I mean, people want to be loved.
True.
So wherever that love comes from is where they'll probably migrate to. And if they don't understand true love, like the triune God, right? The triune love of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, then they're going to just migrate into whatever they're feeling the love is and whatever that looks like. And so
I agree.
I agree. Yeah, I totally challenge people. Look, not just go out there and say one time, hey, God loves you, and then walk away. But if they give you their phone number, if they give you a way to talk to them, hit them back up. Mm-hmm. Reach out to them.
Right.
You know, invest time in them. I think this year our Bible study group, we took on intentional. We need to be intentional with Christ. We need to be intentional with this message. You know, we start to be consumed by the COVID or whatever's going on in the atmosphere or whatever's going on in the streets or however that works. And we forget because we get consumed within ourselves. When we need to be pouring out, we need to be receiving the Holy Spirit, the living water, being filled up and then pouring this out onto others.
Yeah.
And if we're not doing that as the Christian church, then we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Which I think we're in trouble anyways, but that's
we are.
That's a whole nother.
Pretty bad.
That's a whole nother topic. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, exactly.
But we are in trouble. But we need to have that boldness. We need Christians to have that boldness. There is a generation called Gen Z that is just eager to hear what we have to say. And
I agree.
We've talked to a lot of people about this. Some people who are really into that, and I think that we need to start making connections. We need to get out of our houses. We need to get away from just that, you know, our church, our little church pods, right? And they're good. Church pods are where you come back and get revitalized and strengthened.
Right.
To what? To go back out.
Right.
But we need to be not just here focusing inward, but we need to turn and start focusing outward.
Mm-hmm.
True. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of gangs are not hurting for recruits. People come from broken homes, no love, don't know what love is. Here comes a gang saying, hey, we'll love you. We'll make you part of our family. Even though it's negative, but that's what they're looking for, to be part of something. So, you know, there was a time when just about every Christian church on this planet went door to door and knocked on people's doors. That's not happening a lot no more. The cult groups do it.
Right.
The cults are always knocking on your door, ready to give you a pamphlet, you know, with some incorrect, erroneous information on it. But, because of the COVID-19 thing, I think a lot of people end up looking for an answer.
Yeah.
Looking for some type of spiritual explanation for it. And unfortunately, the doomsday pastors took off. They don't make things, you know.
Right.
They don't offer.
They kind of mess everything up, you know.
Right.
So when you think about all the doomsday pastors that are out there, I'm 60 years old. I've heard just about every doomsday pastor on this planet, and ain't none of them got it right. So
Right.
I'm like, okay, just sit down for a minute, Mr. Doomsday Pastor, and just sit in the corner for a while, and we'll get back with you later on, you know. Right. When the locusts come, that's when we'll call you, okay?
I mean, they must forget we're in the dispensation of grace.
Right.
It's like,
right, exactly.
Right. It's like, but yeah, I've heard them. I travel to Africa, so I get to see that as well. And you know what's funny is people flock to them.
Yeah.
It's like it's amazing to see them. They want to come in and they want to hear negative, or they want to hear destruction. They want to hear, you know, because what's happened is they've gotten to a point where they're thinking up. They're not thinking now.
Right. Exactly.
And they want it to end.
Yeah.
They're like, I want this just to be over. This sucks. It hurts. I don't like it. I just want to go home to heaven instead of bringing heaven to earth.
Right.
Living in that peace. You know, the Apostle Paul, he never fought the politics. He spoke the gospel.
True.
He spoke the gospel. He got beat. He got thrown in prison. He got stoned to death. I mean, and yet the only thing that he stood for was this message of hope through Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
That you
Exactly.
can overcome your sin. That the gang, though it's good in the negative sense, doesn't feed you and fill you the way that Christ can feed you and fill you. And I love that message.
That's definitely a good message, because I know a lot of Christians, they want the wicked to get judged right now. Mm-hmm. It's like, God, bring down the hellfire, brimstone on all these bad people. I said, hold on. Didn't Jesus come to save people?
Right.
But y'all want to wipe out 75% of the world's population because your life is so pure and righteous. I don't think it is.
Right.
You know, when you think about it, but they just want the hellfire and brimstone to come down right now and to wipe out everybody who's been deceived by Satan.
Yeah. They forget where they were. And one thing I can say, it's a testimony to the power of grace and its threat to the enemy, in that when I choose to pray for groups that I see most people demonizing. Right. I end up, and Shea can attest to this because it's very recent with the craziness going on in the world. Like, I remember when we first started our podcast, one of our first posts on Instagram, I was still looking at all the likes to see, who all's liking our stuff. Now we don't look, but there was a name that I didn't recognize, but it was on the photo of just Shea, right? And I hit it, and it was a witch, and her page like claims she's a witch, like owns it, and all her posts are like demonic. Wow. And she's here liking a picture of my husband for our Christian podcast. And I'm like, that's interesting. There's a spark of hope. There's a little bit of fear. Like, is this our first attack from the enemy? Like all these thoughts are coming. Right. And then we look and see that her kids that she has tagged are, one of them's drawing demons for fun, and seems like a very tortured soul based on what they're posting. But regardless, instead of praying to fight her off, to thwart her, to destroy her, to cast her away, to all these things,
destroy my enemies,
right? Instead of just praying a hedge of protection over us, I went to a women's group that I'm a part of, and actually we went to many different groups that we know, and we were like, please pray for this woman and her family. And that night and the next night, we had trouble. The first night, Shea had trouble sleeping. He just very uncomfortable, very agitated, like he was having a lot of trouble. And then we prayed, and eventually he was able to kind of rest. But I don't know if you slept that night. It was he felt like there was a reason to stay up, no rest, no peace, praying all night. And then the next night we were praying for her again, because we were like not even connecting the two. We were praying for her again, and I, like, right when we were toward the end of the prayer, all of a sudden I was having a lot of trouble breathing. That's not a thing for me. I don't have asthma. I breathe just fine. And it felt like there was just this pressure. Like I was trying so hard. Like I was having to fight to breathe. My body was aching. Like I felt terrible. And I was like, no, I feel like I'm about to faint. Like, and instead of like stopping, I was like, you know what? I'm going to just keep praying for this woman while I feel this way. So it was almost like a spiteful, like, shut up, devil, like I'm gonna keep praying, because we felt like that was a resentment, an evil that was resentful, because not many people pray for witches. When I asked this woman's group to pray, like 50 women said yes, but there were 2 like, I don't know why you're wasting your time praying for a witch.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
And I was like, you should spend a lot of time praying for witches, because that's how you end witches, by turning them into normal women again.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right,
That's
exactly.
how you defeat the darkness, is not by destroying this woman, but destroying the evil that has seduced her into a place. And we've also, there have been nights where we pray for the dark, like the principalities of this world that are like humans ensnared in the principalities of this world, the ones that got, like, the devil is pretty much on first name basis with, to get all this stuff rolling. And we were praying for them. We're like, Lord, if there's a single one that would accept you, may they hear your word and be unable to deny it again. Nightmares, restlessness, you know? So it's like, there's that shows that the devil doesn't like when you pray for his people.
Exactly.
Because he knows that there's power there, and he thinks that he's gotten the world to hate them enough that no one's going to waste their time praying for them. So pray for them, because there's not many who are. But the prayers of the righteous availeth much. So we have to pray for them. You can't just defeat child trafficking by catching all the child traffickers, because you arrest one or kill one, there's another one to take over. What you do, you pray for these people. You pray for the spirits that are pushing these people to do these terrible things. That's how you truly defeat it, right? Because you can't just cut the head off a snake and a new snake shows up. You have to pray that these people wake up to what they're doing, and then they turn around and they accept Christ and fight on behalf of Christ through prayer, through evangelism, to keep these children safe. And that's just one example, but I mean, there's so many.
And y'all don't think you know, oh, I need to pray for witches and whatever, and not pray for our presidents. Come on, man, pray for everybody.
Right, you pray for everyone. Like, some people will be like, you know, this person's a straight up demon. I'm like, in the same way that a person doesn't die and become an angel. I'm so tired of that misconception. But anyway, when your grandma died, she's not an angel now. She's still grandma in heaven, right?
Right.
If she went to heaven, she's a human. An angel.
Everybody's grandmother's in heaven now. Let me tell you.
In the same way that you don't become an angel if you're good, you don't become a demon if you're bad.
Right.
Demons and angels are separate. So you can't demonize anyone. You need to pray for them. And for their sake, because there is possession, there is seduction, there is entrapment, and the devil uses all of those things to get to people. And the only thing that can deliver them is salvation, because you said this yesterday. You can cast a demon out. You can pray and fast all day long and cast that demon out of that person, but if you don't fill them with Christ, 7 times more demons can move right back into that house. So you don't want to cast demons out and then move on. You need to have the heart to work and help this person come to know Christ. That's the only answer. Just unpossessing people means nothing. They'll just get possessed again. You have to. That extra step is Christ.
And that's why that love and that I say evangelism, but you know, when we speak to people about the love of Christ, about the love of God, I don't just stand out there and like pray out, you know, demon possession. You know, it's like, no, then you're leaving them vulnerable.
Right.
Yeah.
Bring them a message. Bring them a message of hope. Bring them that message. Don't worry about the demon that's inside of them. In your prayer closet, in your quiet time, pray for them. Hey, Lord, change their heart, change their spirit. Take them from a hardened heart into a heart of flesh, right? Because that is where we want people to be, because we don't want to just take it out and not leave them, and they have no protection.
Right.
True. Yeah, you know, I knew this was going to be an important podcast. Let me tell you what happened to me last night. I had a dream that something scratched my leg. Right. Check this out. When I woke up, I felt a scratch on my leg, but there was no scratch. I says, okay, I see what's going on now. I'm about to get into a serious conversation today. And I got the enemies all upset about it, but that's okay. You know, maybe when because I go to sleep with my my audio Bible on, right? And he probably attacked me when the audio Bible went off.
Right.
Never got attacked, but I said, you know, this hasn't happened in the world. I must be on the right track, because whenever you start doing the work for God, Satan's not going to look the other way.
No.
He's going to say, I got to stop that train right now.
He gets real petty real quick when you're doing it right.
Exactly. I like, before I went to seminary, school, my second time I went, back in around about 2007, 2008, somewhere around there, it's like everything crazy started happening all around me. All this madness. I'm saying, what's going on, Lord? All this madness happening around me. But, you know, Satan knew I was going to get more weapons to use against him. And what you said about, getting a demon out of somebody, you got to give them Jesus.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because once you give them Jesus now will direct their footsteps.
Right.
Because without Christ, Satan's going to direct your footsteps. He's going to have you doing all kind of weird stuff.
Yeah, for sure. People forget there's only two camps. You're either for or against Christ. There's no neutral.
Exactly.
Like, oh, I don't worship the devil, but I don't believe in Jesus. I'm in the middle. No, he says that if you don't have Christ, you work for the devil, whether you like it or not. You're a slave to the devil. And people forget that. Even Christians, they forget that. And they're like, well, this person's nice. I'm like, I'm not saying they're not nice, but they're in danger. They're in mortal danger. And you need to take it as seriously. Like, they're going to have the same response from Jesus if they go up and answer to him when they die without him. They're going to have the same response that terrible sinner, right, has. You have, I mean, it's yes or no, black or white, up or down. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, because we're in the information age, young people have access to so many different religious perspectives.
Right.
You can actually become a master in any religion you want with about, 40 hours of internet time.
Right.
And you're the next guru about to mess somebody's life up. And the thing about I always tell people is two things. Number one, conversion with Christ like that.
Right.
Moment you believe.
Right.
There's no doubt that something happens. Mm-hmm. And then there's a transformation process that takes place. Mm-hmm. No one else can say that. I double dog dare anybody to say what I just said.
Right.
Yeah, and I'll say, show me the evidence.
Right.
Because they can't.
Right.
They can't. And if you think about it, when you take a look at all the religions of the world, everybody hates the Christians. Mm-hmm. To me, that's like light bulb. We must be right. Because if everybody hates us,
wasn't a believer.
Right. Apparently, we must be right. Everybody hates us.
Right. I was like, the devil really hate. Like, I was looking into the occult before I came to Christ, not because I wanted to do it, but because I was scared of it. I was being attacked. Like, I felt it, and I was like, I need to protect myself. And I was like, can I use crystals? What can I use? And all this crazy stuff. But what I kept finding out when I looked into the occult, when I looked into why the music and entertainment industry was getting darker and darker with weirder and weirder music videos that didn't have anything to do with the lyrics, I was looking into all the symbols and all the meanings and all the things. And it's like over and over again, it was inverted Christian symbolism. It was going back to beliefs in entities that are against God, not against Buddha, not against not against Hare Krishna. No, it was always trying to tamper with biblical scripture, with who Jesus is and the symbols of Christ. And I was like, I need to actually learn more about the God I already know wins in the end. I need to learn more about him because he has the answers, because the people I'm scared of are scared of him, not anybody else. So he's my
so hope. True. Yeah. Because I was in the independent music game for a long, long time. Then I realized that wasn't my calling. And I've had a chance to talk to a lot of artists. And the story that sticks out the most. I was talking to this couple of gentlemen. I was working security at that particular time. And they told me they were at the brink of getting a major recording label contract with some major people. Mm-hmm. They were invited to a mansion. They were asked to participate in some satanic rituals. Mm-hmm. They said, the team looked at each other and says, no, thank you. Bam. And I thank God that they was raised up as Baptists, and they wanted to get into the music game. And then I realized right then, I guess all the stuff they're talking about, Illuminati and stuff in the music game is really true, because that was my confirmation.
Right.
And if you think about all the young people who are they're just getting their souls destroyed by that wicked demonic industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just see it in the aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
You might not see it at the beginning, but just watch it. Watch as they go through their careers.
Yes.
You
Yes.
see, the beginning, it's all this fire. I mean, I could name them. I'm not naming any names, but
Right.
But you just watch the aftermath. For anyone who's listening right now, look at the aftermath. Look at them like 20 years down the road, 15 years down the road, and see where their lives are at. Either they've pulled completely out because it was going, or you're amazed at like what you see. We see that in the church, but what is the most falsified religion out there? What is the most falsified religion? How many false flags are flying on churches right now?
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't see I'll call it out, the Muslims or the Hindus or anything else. You don't see this falseness that being portrayed. You see it being portrayed on the church because that's
what needs to be coming down.
Enemy. The light is dark's enemy. Even though like dark can't overcome the light and knows it, but wants to take everyone down with it.
Right.
And it's like it's this amazing thing. And so when you look at the obviouses, who's the most persecuted? Honestly, people sit there, they think the Muslims, or they think no, Christians are the most persecuted
exactly
on the planet.
Exactly. I remember I did a sermon a couple of years ago, and one of the things I said is you can have a job, right? You can have Bob worshiping the devil. Everybody loves Bob. You got Joe the Hindu. You know, he doesn't eat no cows and got multiple gods in his office. He's cool. But here comes Chris the Christian. Oh man, here comes Chris the Christian. Man, you're a troublemaker, Chris. What I do? I'm just worshiping Jesus. Yeah, right. You guys think you're the only ones that right. Yeah, you're no fun, Chris. The rest of these guys is just, you never know what they're going to do next. Got demons following all around the place. But as soon as Chris the Christian shows up, oh my goodness, that's the problem. We got to get rid of this guy because he's making trouble for all the kids.
Right.
I know. It's amazing.
Yes. Well, we're about to end our episode. Do you have anything you want to share with everybody? Any last comments? And I got another question to ask you too before we end it.
All right. Do you have anything?
I think that, if I was to encourage anyone out there, if you don't understand your identity or who you are, look to the Bible.
True.
The one who created us paints a beautiful picture of exactly how he sees you, and then what benefits he gives you when you turn yourself over to him. And
True.
Now you've become something that you could never imagine on your own. Yeah.
I'll say, and I say this a lot, but it's not about what works, it's about what's true.
Right.
And my saying used to be, it's not about what you like, it's about what works, right? Because I'm in graphic design. So I used to say it for that, like, don't get hung up in your feelings. Does it work as a design? Is it the best thing or is it not?
Right.
But I came to Christ and I realized that a lot of people will turn away from God because they don't agree with him, but they believe that he's an all-knowing God. And I'm like, those two don't mix. If he's an all-knowing God and he created everything, then he's always right. And you're only right if you agree with him. And so if you're struggling because you disagree with him, if you're struggling because he wants you to do something, but you don't want to do it anyway. Right. Believe him anyway. Leave your preference at the door and choose what he says is true, because that is what it means to let him be your Lord, and that you can walk in that fruitful path.
Exactly. Last question. What are your favorite books of the Bible?
Well, I like Philippians.
I'm so cliche because I like Proverbs, but the reason I like Proverbs isn't just because it's cute, and because it makes good calligraphy. I like it because you can sit there and it's like the Cliff Notes version of what you can learn throughout the Bible. There's a verse in Proverbs that alludes to every lesson that you can learn anywhere else in the Bible. There might even be 10. So if you want to get started, I say go to Proverbs and read one a day. There's 31. So
I'm gonna wrap up with Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
Because I just like to understand, and this is my own life experience. Ecclesiastes really resonates. Philippians only because Paul sits there and says everything else is dung. That's why I like Philippians. I like that. If it ain't Christ-centric, it's dung.
Right.
But Ecclesiastes is because of the storms. I've been through so many storms in my life, and so many challenges of needing to overcome, knowing and then finding out I couldn't overcome them on my own, that I needed Jesus Christ. And so when you look at Ecclesiastes, it shows this beautiful, again, I love this painting that's being done about how you're going to go through seasons, but you know what? You're never alone. You have God, you have Christ, you have the Holy Spirit to rely on. And so if people would just grab a hold of that, all of the turmoil and all this, these storms that we're seeing right now, you could get through them a lot easier.
Exactly. Well, y'all have been great guests on the Clergy Talk podcast. It's been so beautiful talking to two strong Christian power couples. Now, y'all a real power couple. I don't know what the world is talking about, but that's a true power couple when you got two people that love the Lord Jesus Christ and are living to do his work. And once again, thank you very much for being on my podcast. I'm going to keep both your ministries in my prayer, and y'all have a blessed, prosperous, wonderful year.
Awesome.
You too. Thank you so much. It has been great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for edifying us as well.
Thank you.
Amen.